Hi, my name is Kyle Mulholland and I'm the minister here at St Silas Church in Wolverhampton. And today I want to answer the question, how can I know? Perhaps you ask the question, how can I know there's a God? How can I know there's a heaven? How can I know that prayer is answered? How can I know that I can have forgiveness? There's a passage in the Bible that speaks on this subject, and it's in Mark chapter 2, verses 1 to 12. In that passage, Jesus tells us how we can know that spiritual things are real. Jesus does something unseen, something spiritual. He says to a paralyzed man who's lowered in front of him, "Son, thy sins be forgiven thee." Jesus forgives the man's sins. There's no physical change, there's no visible change. But according to Jesus, there is an unseen spiritual change. In the world of spiritual things, this man's sins have been forgiven. This man is reconciled to God. This man is on the way to heaven, says Jesus. But the question is, how can we know that that is true? How can we know this man's sins have truly been forgiven? How can we know that this man truly is on the way to heaven? And in our skeptical culture today, we may be asking the question, how can I know there's even a God to forgive sins, a God to care about sins, a heaven to which I can go after I die? Jesus proves, not only to this man, but to a crowd gathered in the place where Jesus forgives the man's sins, and to others as well. Jesus proves that spiritual things are real. There are some skeptics in the room. They're not necessarily skeptical about all spiritual things, but they're certainly skeptical about Jesus' authority to forgive sins. And Jesus says to them, "But that ye may know that the Son of Man hath power on earth to forgive sins." And then he turns to the paralyzed man and he says to him, "I say unto thee, arise and take up thy bed and go thy way into thine house." Now, this is a man who has been paralyzed for a long time. He is lying on a mat. He is carried by his friends. He cannot walk. If he could, then he almost certainly would. But as soon as Jesus says to him, "Arise, take up thy bed and go thy way into thine house," what happens? The man rises up onto his feet. He's gained new strength. He's gained a new ability to walk. He picks up the mat on which he, up until this point, had been carried, and he walks all the way to his house. Jesus performs a visible miracle of healing to prove that invisible things are real and that he has authority in the invisible spiritual realm. How can I know there's a God? How can I know there's a heaven? How can I know that prayer is answered? How can I know that sins can be forgiven? Because Jesus, who performed miracles that people had never seen, Jesus who did things that nobody else could do, Jesus who had power over the natural realm in a way that nobody else does, he says these things are real. And he also says he is the one who has authority over them. So I want you to have confidence today. The spiritual realm is real, and if you go to Jesus, then spiritual blessings can be yours.